Oh my God, my brain is still in football season. College basketball Saturday. We have a glorious slate. Tons of top 25 games today, as well as some really other interesting matchups, some spots to play on, some teams and to play against. And we're going to get through all of that for probably the next hour, guys. We're going to see you guys get to dictate the show. Every single Saturday and Sunday here on WagerTalk's Last Call. You guys jump in the comments section. You tell us the questions you want answered by our experts from WagerTalk.com, and we get you guys those answers. I apologize. No Art to Caesar today. He is on vacation, but I did text our good friend Jeff Sherman from the Westgate Superbook to see if he will give us some of those needs as well as sharp and public plays. So let's see if we get a text back from him here shortly. Fingers crossed. We do have Gianni the Greek. He has got the steam room going on today, but we are going to talk to him up first. Ralph Michaels, as you guys know, the stat daddy, the king of the TNA. And then, of course, Steve Merril, 2 R's, 1 L. You guys know him from Wager Talk today, as well as his Fade the Public videos here on the Wager Talk YouTube channel. So shout out to all of you guys, whether you're on X, whether you're on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube. Jump in the comments section. We'll get your questions answered. Let's get up here first. VR. Is he waiting in the wings from the steam room? Yes, he is. Per usual, there's VR. We know that he's got a very busy Saturday. VR, tell us first what's going on over in the steam room. And then second, let's get into some of these games.
Yeah, we're going to dive into every college basketball game, Kel. I go through each one. I know there's a ton of them, but we go through them quickly. I let them know if there's any sharp side that we bet on already that I did not release as premium plays because they come in there. I have them prepared. Come in there with your leans. And then let me share some information, see if I could confirm some of those leans, or if we're opposite, maybe take a step back and dig back into it. So I go through each one, and the ones that that we didn't bet, or somebody didn't send me from another group that they bet, I'll let them know this is what I see in the back end. I'm seeing their square accounts on this play, or their sharp accounts on this play, or this is what I concluded from the line move and digging into my handicap. And I get a good set of power ratings from a solid college basketball player. Better that I know. He doesn't bet enough to move the markets, but he wins consistently year after year. And I know a lot of groups that end up piggybacking some of his stuff. So I've got a good relationship with him, and he sends me his power ratings every Monday. He updates them throughout the week. But, there's slight adjustments. He's a lot more committed to college basketball. So there's slight adjustments, but it gives me a good baseline to begin with. So we're going to do that. We go over results, which is first and foremost, because the key for me is to be accountable. That's why I created it, and to help guide them through a year of betting for profit, because there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. You know how the swings come, and you never know when you're going to catch fire. The goal is to be able to maintain your bankroll for that time. If you have an edge, it will materialize. But if you're over betting your edge, if you're mismanaging your risk, you're not going to be around for it. So my goal each and every week is to review those money management goals that I have set for them, and more importantly, the blueprint that's worked for me. And then to also help brush those demons off our shoulders that we all face every day. Like if you lose a tough game, or you lose a big play, you placed a good bet, you got CLV and everything, but it just didn't win. Brush that off your shoulders, not make those mistakes of chasing, of over betting. We all have to be reminded of that, myself included. And I've been doing this so long, and sometimes you just get frustrated, and, a play that may be borderline, you're like, I'm going to fire. The steam room's to help you not do that. And again, we're now probably definitely less than 2 weeks away from starting the blackjack seminar. So I'm going to go over the details with that, with everyone in there, so they could be prepared for when we launch, because I'm really excited about that. So busy day, and a busy couple months ahead as we approach March Madness.
Yeah, I love that, VR. I keep some pretty meticulous records myself. Obviously, I use the Pickett app. That's attached to my Hard Rock sports betting account, which is nice. So it keeps the wins and losses for you. But I also have a column on my spreadsheet about games that I wanted to play versus didn't. 3 games this week I missed the number on. I stayed off all 3. The closing line lost, the opening number 1. And I thought, you know what? Yep. Finally, I am listening.
That's college basketball, especially. College basketball, college football. Stuff you have to go. You got to be able to pass, but especially when you have such a big board to choose from. There's no reason to ever take a bad number. I mean, I fall victim of that all the time. And I have to remind myself, because you really like a play, you've handicapped it, you got good information on it, you want to fire, but all of a sudden you're ready to get down at plus 14 and now it's 12.5. What do? Do you still take the 12.5? You're like, it's only not even a bucket. It's not even a bucket. It's a free throw. It's a free throw and a half. I should take it, right? No. Back off. There'll be a better spot to get your money in. Again, you want to be betting from positions of strength. And when you're not taking a good number, you're not doing that. You're hoping, again, for good luck to fall your way. That if they win and cash that ticket for the wise guys, they also cover another 1.5 or 2. You never want to be put yourself in that position because, again, then you're guessing. And at least when you place a good bet, you know before it tips off. You can't play the game for them. You can't ref the game for them. You can't call the plays. You can't do any of that. But you can place good bets. And there's no better barometer than beating the closing number. I can't stress that enough. I know everybody's coming on here for picks, but that's the goal. The sportsbook's not going to kick you out because of how much money you won. They're going to back you off for your ability to win because their goal is to cut you off before the long term. And the way they conclude that is, are you beating them to the closing line, the closing number? Because that is the only number that we have that is obviously the most efficient. It's the closest thing we have, the true implied win probability, because all the information's factored in. We already know who's starting. We know who's sitting. We know who's injured. We know what the sharps like. We know what the public like. We know the weather in some sports where that matters. So if you could beat that constantly and you manage risk correctly, you're a mathematical certainty to turn a profit. So never forget that. You're going to place good bets that lose, but the best way to grade your bet, whether you placed a good one or not, see where you're bet it and then see where the number closes. And, like yesterday, Penn, we got down from 17. Sure, we bet it again at 16.5, bet 15.5, but it closed at 14. I think they probably covered that. They covered the game. But if you're betting it at 14 and you're constantly buying the bottom and selling the top and buying the top and selling the bottoms, you're just never going to make money. Sure, you got that day it worked out your way. But if you do that over and over and over again, just like the books, a mathematical certainty to beat you because they have that built-in edge, you're going to just beat yourself doing that. So always try to bet from a position of strength. If you miss the number, there's another one coming. Unless you have the power to bring the boat back, let it go and wait for the next one to jump on. And very few bettors out there have the ability to manipulate a market and bring that number back if they missed it. I can't do that. And I know very few people that can.
Yeah, VR, I'm going to walk back something you said. I know that people want picks, and we'll get to Dustin's question here in a minute. Of course, we all want picks, but I think our number one goal is here at WagerTalk to make people better bettors, make them understand what they're betting. Because one of the worst things you can do, and John and I talk about it on Kelly and Merril all the time, is that you don't know what you're betting. And if you don't know what you're betting or who you're betting against, right, whether it's a book in Las Vegas, a phone app, or a local or an offshore, you want to understand because you already are losing from the side of the house's edge, right? You're already, as you say, laying 11 to win 10. So whether it's a prop bet, right? I lost to Will Howard over 12.5 rushing yards in the Texas game. And I thought, what the hell? Oh, wait, because he took 3 knees at the end of the game and got negative rushing yards. That's how this works. Sometimes people need to be educated just a little bit more. And I like to think that's what we do here at WagerTalk. So I appreciate that. Let's get into some stuff. I have not heard back from Jeff Sherman just yet, but I will share some of that stuff, whether he sends it to me or not. I'm going to just keep texting everybody in that room. Dustin wants to know how you're handling college futures for basketball at this time. Does anything stand out? VR, yesterday I did a show with my good friend CT Betts, and he and I talked about my Florida at 40-1. And I sat right on the show and I said, I can't give somebody Florida now at 10-1. I still like Florida. I think they're going to make it deep into the tournament, but those are significantly different bets. Do you have anything right now that the guys are asking you to bet for a futures perspective? Anything standing out? Dustin wants to know.
Yeah, great question. Great question. And Kelly nailed it. She's got Florida plus 44,000 in her pocket. She's going to build up equity as long as they get the Sweet 16. She's going to be able to make money off that ticket. If you get it at 10-1, that may not be the case. That's the difficulty. And it's 2 completely different bets. Like her implied win probability and yours is going to be so different. They're not even in the same. It's not the same bet at all. Like once you miss it, that's it. You placed a great bet. Good. People should not be piggybacking it that late. Even if they get to the Final Four, you're just not getting the best of it right now. We rarely bet futures because the hold is so high. It's like pari-mutuel betting. Like I always explain, it's like the horse track. That's why horse racing is dying for young people who don't really bet it. They're educated enough now to know the hold's so high. That's why they give horse players such great comps. They expect to make 40 cents out of every dollar they bet, compared to sports betting where they make 4.5% for every 100. So every 100 they're making $4.50 compared to $40 in the hold. So they're very, very selective in the futures. But they do bet them when they see something's out of whack. They did so. The only thing they've bet so far in futures was in women's college basketball, actually, where we bet Texas at plus 1,200 all the way plus down to 10-1. We bet Texas. We bet like USA plus 150 to win this 4-nation hockey during the All-Star break. Like, those are the kind of things we do get out if there's sometimes the line skewed a little bit. Nothing so far in college basketball tournament, nothing for the NCAA tournament. I'm sure once the conference tournaments start, they'll probably look on the board and see if there's anything that's offering value. It has happened in the past, but just nothing so far that I've seen in any of the accounts. But I will not be surprised leading into the tournament that they do so, because once they start posting up teams to get to the Final Four, teams to win national championship, teams to advance so far, those are props, more or less, futures that they get involved in. But it's just a little bit too early.
All right, VR, let's get into a couple things you've seen there on your back end. I did just receive that text from the Westgate. So let's hear what you got first, and then I will confirm. There's quite a bit of things here. Actually, let me go through this first while you're looking up your stuff.
Please.
All right, sharp stuff right here. Houston was a 1.5-point favorite, now 2.5. Vanderbilt was 13.5, now down to 12.5. Mizzou, 1.5-point favorites, now 2.5-point favorites. Chattanooga bet up from 5.5 to 7. UMass, good old Frank Martin's team, was a 1-point favorite, now 2.5. Denver was 13.5, now 12.5. He said today the public is on Arkansas, North Carolina, Michigan State, and Baylor. Art said his favorite play today is San Diego State, -1.5. I know the guys in the questions always want to know what Art's favorite play. San Diego State. Love to see it. VR, anything on your end that either correlates or goes against?
Yeah, definitely. Here's what we bet down so far. It's a little early, but here's what we got down already. 606, Florida State plus 4.5. 621, Vandy plus 13. I see that's a sharp side over at the Westgate as well. 662, Seton Hall plus 14.5. 697, Stanford plus 19.5. 703, Jacksonville State plus the 3.5. 709, Cincinnati plus the 12.5. 773, Michigan State plus the 7. That goes opposite of what Art said, that there's also public money on. So see what the number is where we got in and what the public's betting it at.
Resistance, VR, do you think that they said, okay, enough, Illinois 6.5, fine, but 7, too many points?
That's exactly it. That's exactly what happened. And especially then, if you know then that the bettors are also going to come in on it and maybe drop that line down, you could obviously even hit a middle if it moves the other way. Like, they come back the other way once they see, they get out ahead of some games, because a lot of these early moves are getting out ahead of the market and then coming back the other way. Sometimes it's not even a manipulation to get a better number and 2x, 3x, 5x the bet later. Sometimes it's going to create an obvious middle for us, because that's a marquee standalone game that they know the public's going to come in on side A or side B. Let's get out ahead of that. Let's bet it. Once they force the books to move it even more, they set us up with a nice 2-3 point middle. And in a game that's supposed to be close, that's always a good position to find yourself in. Some of the one-sided stuff that I've seen already is, and this is agrees with what Art said, 603 Arkansas. That one jumps off the board right away as being one of the most heavy bet early games. I'm seeing it still more Arkansas money coming in at +8. 684 Georgia plus 2.5. 708 Alabama -1. 712 Georgia Tech -4. And Providence, 738 Providence plus 2.5. So far in the back end of books that I have access to that are, public accounts, negative EV accounts, those are the ones that already are seeing not just one-sided money, but one-sided ticket count. That's what usually sticks out more for the betting public. Because again, you could get 10 guys to bet Team A for 100 each, and then get a sharp guy to come in and bet Team B for 2,000. And they actually need the square side to win, because they only got 1,000 on Team A. The square side, they got 2,000 on the sharp side. So I tend to balance both out to take a look at both. Because again, ticket count doesn't tell you much, but it tells you much when it's not combined with money the other way. Like when the ticket count and the money lines up in one direction and it's not sharp, that's what sticks out the most to me. And again, Arkansas, Georgia, Alabama, Georgia Tech, and Providence, those all line up exactly like that. I mean, Arkansas right now, that's the heaviest bet early game, that and Clemson as far as action. And Arkansas has about 9 out of 10 bets plus on that, 9 at 90% of the money on them as well, where with Clemson it's closer to like 65, 70% of the tickets and the money on them. And then finally, another smaller one, I'm surprised they're taking the dog is St. Bonaventure. St. Bonaventure plus the 2 is sticking out a little bit. Usually those when the recreational bettors like the dog or when they take the dog on the money line and think they don't need the points, those are the ones I like to pay attention to. Again, you're not going to get rich fading the public because you're not getting 11 to 10, but you tend to not want to keep piggybacking those sides with the public, especially if they're not getting respect. Like if the book's taking a position and saying, God, you could give us all the team A you want, and we're just going to keep the line at what it is, that's a telling sign they think the bettors are taking the worst of it. But if they're moving it, it shows they got to give it some respect and they're trying to attract some money the other way because they don't want that much risk. Because again, the public may not get respect in the number, but they bet enough money sometimes to force the book to have to move it if they're not as confident in that line where they don't want to take that much risk on a game.
VR, you're the best. I appreciate all of your insight every single Saturday and Sunday here. One last question. One last question before we get to Ralph Michaels. Of course, we got to ask VR some of the sharp UFC plays. VR, here's kind of the thing with the UFC where it gets really frustrating for me is I'm not a chalk eating weasel. So it's really hard for me to lay like 140, 150. That's pretty much my threshold for some of these. Now, I don't mind every once in a while throwing together $2 plus favorites and hoping that both of those guys win just because I know we're going to be out and we're going to be watching the fights and you want a little bit of action. But give me a little insight into what we should be looking for in this UFC card.
As of right now, so you know, the dogs have been crushing. Last year was an outlier year for the UFC where over 70% of favorites versus the closing number actually got the money. And the dogs were so far behind. So far early on, we knew the market's going to correct itself, but I didn't think it would happen this quickly because we're at 50 fights going into today in the UFC, and favorites are only at 56%. Dogs are at 42%, and there's been one draw. So the dogs are winning at a 10% higher clip than what you expect them historically. So they have overcorrected. And because of that, you'd expect most sharp bettors to be continuing to bet the dogs. That's not the case on this card. Unfortunately, this is the bottom line that they bet on. And when you look at these numbers, you're going to be like, okay, they're all gone. Like they took Jacqueline Calvacante probably at like plus 450, 500. She's up to like minus 750. They took Walter Walker at minus 190 all the way up to minus 210, 220. I'm now looking at close to a minus 300 line for him. They took, who else do I have from the really sharps? Oh, Delgado, Jose Delgado at minus 300, minus 350. He's up to minus 600. They took Yusuf Zalal at like minus 350, something like that, 400. He's up to like minus 600. So they're not afraid to lay that chalk in the UFC and in MMA and combat sports if they think that the betting line should be a lot higher. Like that's the disconnect a lot of recreational bettors make where they think value means plus money. Value means getting 3-1, 4-1, 5-1 on your money. To these guys, it's simple. If they think a fighter should win 85% of the time and he's minus 400, where the break even's 80%, they're going to bet it. They're going to bet it. And when the market then closes higher than that implied, they've proven they were right. It doesn't mean he's going to go out there and win the fight, but at least it means that the true implied win probability was way off and they were able to take advantage of that. Some of the dogs that have, and even Edmund Shabazian, they laid up like 350 on him. He's like at another one that's up to like 400 or 500. So this is a very chalky card. I can tell you some sharp bettors I really respect that do like a couple dogs here. They like in the main event, Jared Cannonier. They think he's live against Rodriguez. They think it's a lot of recency bias there. Rodriguez won his last 3 fights, but if you look at the level of competition, it's very weak, where Cannonier's lost his last 2, but his strength of schedule, it's not even close. The problem is trajectory of careers. One's at the tail end declining. One's kind of looking like this is the best he's been running. And then betting against the Bonfim brothers. I know Dave Mason came on yesterday and gave, I believe, Israel Bonfim as a sharp play. The line obviously reflects that, but I know sharp bettors that I respect definitely faded the Bonfim brothers because they tend to be overvalued. People put that Bonfim parlay in, and more times than not, the books know it's coming. They won on the Contender Series together. They won on, I think, their first card together. So it's been one of those things that they continue to bet. And obviously, the market's going to correct itself, and they're going to get priced too high to where even if they win, it's not a good bet. So I have seen some sharp bettors betting against the Bonfim brothers. And like I said, going with Jared Cannonier in the main event. But unfortunately, it's a chalky card, and that's where the sharps are on as well.
Yeah, it can be tending to be a little chalky. And I understand seeing some regression to the mean here, VR. All right, tell everybody when you're going to be on the Steam Room and how they can join.
Yep, I'll be on there in another 30 minutes. We'll be going through, like I said, every college basketball game, going over the MMA card, of course, in a lot more detail and everything else I touched on. The link should be out. You should have already received an email. If you've jumped on board, welcome to join us. And again, it's going to be a good time. Hopefully we do some damage in college basketball. And I hope when all the dust settles, you make some money today.
Love doing some damage. We've got 37 minutes until the college basketball slate tips off, or at least the good college basketball slate. There might be an 11:30 Eastern game I forgot about. But we got Ralph Michaels waiting in the wing. Sorry, Ralph. I was off by 4 minutes. I told him to hop on at 11:20. I know he's trying to go out and get some sun. Ralph's been just living the Florida life. Like me, I'm stuck in this dark office with all this blue light. Ralph gets to go work by the pool. That's why he's tan. I'm very jealous, Ralph. I will also not be going out to the pool today because of this gorgeous college basketball slate. Like, this is like Christmas morning for college basketball bettors. So we've got a ton of questions in the chat we're going to get answers to. Welcome in, Ralph.
Hey, Kelly, I love listening to VR, and you talked about how you kept a chart of close games that you decided not to use because of negative CLV. Well, I ran some numbers on the database while VR and you were chatting away. There's been 4,810 college basketball games this season. 321 were decided with an ATS margin of 1-1. So that's 6.7%. 634 games, or 13.2 games, decided by 2 points or less against the spread, and 3 points or less. 19.4% of all college basketball games this season have been decided +3 to -3. So when you talk about leaving those games and missing it by a value, he talked about Pennsylvania, 17 down to 14. That gives you a negative 19.4% opportunity of losing value on those games. So just to quantify one of the things you and VR were talking about.
I think you need to tweet that, Ralph, because as much as I joke, I think my CLV trophy's up there in the right-hand corner so you guys can't see it anymore. And I know it was a regular staple with bet on it, but it is the most ironic thing to me. Like, it is the most frustrating thing. And so after realizing that, like making all these CLV trophy jokes, I was like, I've got to add a column to my spreadsheet of games that I wanted to bet on but didn't, so that I can physically see. Good job, Kelly. You stayed off a couple of games you were supposed to stay off of, because I think as bettors, as people who love action, we always think about the games that, damn it, I liked Kentucky and I didn't bet them, right? Because your buddies are in the chat or whatever. You always think about those games. You never remember the games that you showed discipline and stayed off of. So, Ralph, I'm going to need you to put that together in a tweet. I think that is absolutely excellent. Let's get to some of these questions here in the chat. I know a lot of you guys want to know. Oh, perfect. This game is tipping off in about an hour and a half. Kelly, I'm visiting Knoxville and going to the Tennessee Vandy game. 12.5 seem high. Now, I will say the text I got from Art, Ralph, if you heard, said that people were on Vanderbilt. I'll say this much. I kind of leaned towards Tennessee in this game. But here's kind of my one caveat with this Tennessee team. I ended up on Kentucky in the second half with some of my buddies the other day. We were watching the flow of the game, and I said, Tennessee, we've seen this team plenty of times this year, and what they don't do is play two halves of basketball. Yes, they have a solid defense. Yes, they have a smotheringly slow tempo, Ralph. But when they get cold, like they did against the Kentucky Wildcats, they stay cold. Do you think that carries over into this game versus Vanderbilt today? Vanderbilt, basically the complete opposite. They like to play fast, but boy, they can't hit a drop in a bucket sometimes. Sometimes this offense is just abysmal. When they are cold from three, they are ice cold.
Yeah, and you look at Vanderbilt. They're a bad 3-point team offensively and defensively. But the issue is this. Tennessee does not have a 3-point shooting ace. They shoot a lot of 3-pointers. In fact, 90% of their points come from threes, but they're in the mid-range of 160. You talked about their defense and you talked about the pace. And to me, it's tough to go on long runs when you are one of the slowest teams and put so much intensity into your defense. You look at those situations and, you pointed it out. 2 halves of basketball. Well, I can tell you this. In the full game this year, Kelly, Tennessee is 13-9 against the spread. And first half, they're only 9-13. So you have an 8-game swing from first half where they struggle to second half where they come alive. You look at some other situations. You have Vanderbilt that is actually 6-3 as an underdog in the first half, and full game they're only 3-6. So if I look at this game, you got an up-tempo team in Vanderbilt coming off against a tough defense, and they did lose that game. They scored, I think, 68. They lost by 10 or 12. But what you said is exactly true for me. If I'm going to play this game, if I'm going first half, I'm going to back Vanderbilt. If I'm playing full game, I expect the defense to wear out the Commodores. So first half, Vandy, full game, Tennessee.
I agree with you, Ralph. As I've mentioned on the show before, second halves have been just awesome. Watching the game, passing the eye test, starting to look at those types of games. Clint Farrar in the comment section, he knows, he's in that group chat. So we'll be looking at Tennessee second half. I do like Vandy first half as well. Wisconsin, Purdue, let's look at the odds logic screen here, Ralph, so I can get a current number. 6, what did he say it was? Now I got the wrong screen open. There we go. 619, 620. Let's see what we got for a current line here. This is a 1 p.m. Eastern game. Pretty much 5.5 across the board, except at the sharp shops. We got a 6 at Pinnacle, 6 at Heritage, Ralph. So always find that interesting for them to be off market. Here's a Wisconsin team I don't know what to think about. Break down this one for me, Ralph.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't think I've used a Wisconsin game this entire year, Kel. And, you look at what they've done and, they are a top 20 team, no question. I think Ken Pom has them, in the 15 range. Purdue, a top 10 team. So you have 2 styles. Now, we're so used in the old days of seeing Wisconsin, that slow pace. That's actually much more Purdue. The funny thing is about Purdue, when they had Edey in the past, teams were very slow bringing up the ball because when you had that interior defense, your guards can press a little more, and the tempo for the opposing team was much slower. Teams are actually shooting the ball once every 17.2 seconds against Purdue. That's actually fast. On the opposite side, Purdue does take its time shooting the ball. They're number 289 in offensive tempo. But, Wisconsin also does not press. They allow their people to get down. In this game, I tend to lean first halves in these situations. And I do like Purdue in the first half. Now, if you look at what they've done off a straight-up loss, remember, they lost to Michigan on the road by 2 points. After they lost to Marquette early, they crushed Marshall, no big deal. But they lost to Penn State. They didn't play well against Maryland. They lost to A&M. They then lost again the next week to Auburn. And then they played Toledo, and they won by 19. Not a great win. After the Ohio State loss, they did play Michigan very well. But I look at Wisconsin and I say, on the road, am I okay trusting Wisconsin on the road? Their only true road wins, Northwestern, Iowa, USC, Rutgers. That's it. And all of those teams are ranked 50 or higher. So until Wisconsin proves to me they can beat an upper echelon team, I'm going to lean Purdue. But again, no skin in this game for me. Slight lean Boilermakers.
I agree with you too, Ralph. Look, coming off that wonky loss, what was that? Last Tuesday to Michigan. That was an interesting game. I watched. That was a close one. That was one of the games I laid off of. I was like, all right, Michigan 2.5. This is the play. And I'm like, no, I missed it. And thank goodness I did. We ended up taking Michigan second half. got the cover there, but would have lost by the hook, and I would have been very angry. All right, let's get into some more of these questions. We got Steve Merril batting last here, so just know that he's waiting in the wings as well, but we're going to give Ralph about 8 more minutes here. Thoughts on Kentucky, Texas? Robert, you just took the question right out of my mouth. Ralph, John Murray often accuses me of hating the Texas Longhorns in football season. I do not hate the Texas Longhorns football team. You know who I hate? I hate the Texas Longhorns basketball team. This team makes me so frustrated. Rodney Terry, get them together. One of the games I wish I would have stayed off of was last Tuesday. I took Texas plus, I think it was 4.5 at home versus Alabama, and Alabama just waxed the floor with this Texas team. They've now had 3 straight losses: Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Alabama. I like this Kentucky team. I know people are thinking it's going to be a letdown spot after Tennessee, but there is no snowball's chance in hell. I am laying it here with the Longhorns.
I can't agree with you more, Kelly, but injuries are the concern here. You know, Butler is a game time decision. I am not playing Kentucky without Butler playing, period. If you're missing your point guard, you know, Texas still has a solid defense. And, you know, Kentucky is a team that, you know, when they're shooting the 3, they shoot it very well. And Texas is a poor 3-point defense. Actually, they rank number 194. So with that said, I agree with you with the Kentucky. But again, with Butler a game time decision, unless I'm watching the game and I know he's 100%, I can't get to the window missing my point guard.
Yeah, that's just a game I'm going to ultimately have to stay off of. I understand why Texas is probably the spot here. I just cannot do it. All right, Richard wants to know about Syracuse. Syracuse was not on my radar or my list today, like VR said. I'd like to put together a list before we get into these games. Syracuse has been just abysmal this year, off ugly loss to Miami. Now they're playing a North Carolina team who's off that ugly loss to Clemson on Monday night. Ralph, make this one make sense. I just don't know why anybody would want to back Syracuse here. I know North Carolina has NC State on deck, but that's not until next Wednesday.
Well, you know, Kel, I'm going to turn that around and say I don't know how anyone could bet North Carolina. You look at North Carolina right now. In their last 7 games, they're 2-5 straight up. Those 2 wins at home against Boston College, and they needed overtime, and at home against Pittsburgh, and they won by 1 point. So you have not beaten a regular season team by more than 1 point in 7 games. So yes, Syracuse is bad, and yes, Syracuse, you know, teams can just run up and down the court. But with these 2 teams and the tempos they have, I actually lean with the North Carolina team total over if I had to bet something. But just to share with you, Kelly, real quick, you know, college basketball, there's 140 games on a Saturday. I go through my first look and I sort of wind it down to like 30 or 40. I take another stab through looking at matchups and technicals, get it down to 20. And then when I have those games, that's how many teams I start looking at into doing significant reading. This team didn't even make it into my top 40, so I don't have a lot of in-depth information to share with you.
All right. Any other questions in the chat? Our producer, Dan, can throw them up on the board.
I do want to share something with you, Kel. Can we talk about 1 against 2, Alabama and Auburn today?
Absolutely. So, that is going to be an electric game. I would not want an under ticket in my pocket to save my, like, that just like makes my skin crawl to even think about.
So, you know, I went back to the database since 2012. 1 against 2s. The one team is actually only 11-16 ATS. And of those games, 69% have gone under the total, 9 overs and 20 unders. But, and it's an important but, this is only the 5th regular season game since 2012 with a 1 against the 2. And the other was back in 2019, Michigan State and Kentucky. I think that was the aircraft game. And then in 2017, Duke against Michigan State. That was another one of those early seasons. So there's only been 1 regular season matchup after December since 2012. That was Kansas and Oklahoma. Kansas won that game and didn't cover. But when I looked at AP top 5 teams playing each other and 2 AP top 10 teams, listen to these numbers, Kel. If a team is a home favorite and both teams are ranked in the top 5 in the regular season, the home team is 7-1 against the spread. That bodes well for people backing Bama. When I looked at home favorites and AP top 10 teams, and you have a higher rank, Alabama obviously, a higher rank than Auburn, home favorites with 2 top 10 teams, the team with the higher rank that's a home favorite, 15-3, 83% against the spread since 2022. This game will be electric. It's the first time in the SEC history, 90-some years, that a 1 is faced to 2. Exciting game. I did not bet the game. If you forced me to give a suggestion, I would, with those strong home court edges for the top 5 and top 10 teams, a slightest of lean to the Crimson Tide.
All right, we got one more question here regarding basically your advantage or disadvantage getting a half point for 10 cents more. Kendall Miller wants to discuss this. And I mentioned earlier on the show, Ralph, that part of what we like to really do is focus on educating and helping people become better bettors, right? College basketball, college football, NFL, any other sport where you are betting a spread versus a money line. We talk about the significance in a half point, right? And what you have to pay for it, right? We know that buying off 3.5 to 3 in the NFL or buying on to the key number 3, the bookmakers just charge you a pretty penny. Depending on where you like to shop, you're paying at least 15 cents. You're not doing 10 cents anymore. But he is right. You can buy a half point for 10 cents at pretty much most of the books. Can you explain why there may be an advantage or it's definitely a disadvantage?
I would not do that. I mean, if you're paying 10 cents for a half a point, we talked that, 6.7% of the games are decided by 1 point either way. So if I go to a half point, we're probably under 3%. So, you're paying 10% for that, for a 3% edge. That tells you number one. Number two, I'm sure if I took those numbers and did totals of 130 to 150, it would be a certain percentage. That number is going to get lower if you have a higher total because you have more variance of 150 or more. The only time I might ever do it, and again, is in a situation where you have a total in the 110s or 120s where the variance is going to be much smaller. But for the most part, again, the math says not to do it. And if, Kelly, like you made your chart, if you put $1 every time you wanted to buy a half point into a jar and then took out 10 because that's what it would be every time you won one, you're going to have some money in that jar at the end of the year.
Very good advice from Ralph Michaels. Get this man to a swimming pool so he can watch the games on his iPad or whatever the hell he does on Saturdays. I'm very jealous. I'm going to be here grinding it out, Ralph, looking for second half winners. Appreciate you as always at Cal Sports LV. Ralph, anything you would like to promote before we kick you out of here?
Nope. I just wanted to say this. I only have one play for sale today. And again, I really enjoy this crowd of people. And I'm just going to go ahead and give it out for free. And it's a situation that I think is very important as I try to pull that up here. My apologies. I had closed it down. When you look at teams that are off a 2 overtime game, and now they're playing on a short rest, 2 days or less. So this is Texas Tech. Conference away teams off a multi-overtime game, and they're a favorite or a dog up to 6. That over-under is 84.2%, Cal, since 2012. Why? You only have 1 day between games. You're off a double overtime game. The opponents press the pace. Texas Tech already 11-9 over-under this season, 5-2 over-under their last 7. And yeah, we make a lot of fun of Oklahoma State's piss-poor team. I'm talking to you, Joe Ranieri. But lately, their offense has been clicking. They have 4 straight overs, and their team total has gone over by a combined 34 points. Their last 4 home games, 4-0 to the over. They've covered by 12 points per game. And their 4-game collective team total, also 34 points. Cowboys, number 42 in tempo nationally, number 3 in the Big 12. Over 149 is when I posted it, Texas Tech and Oklahoma State. My actual client play for sale at WagerTalk, so don't buy it.
I love that. I love that Ralph's giving out premium plays. Ralph, really quick before I let you go, only because now I got to ask. Yesterday I did the show with CT Bets, and I said, no one is talking about this Texas Tech team, right? Somebody earlier asked about futures. I haven't bet them yet. But Texas Tech is an interesting one here. I really wonder why they're flying under the radar. They're probably, I would say, the third best team in the Big 12 right now as it stands today. You mentioned all of the great things about them. Do you think that there's any value in maybe looking at this team? Maybe it's to win the Big 12 championship. We know that a lot of the books are starting to release those conference championship lines, or possibly to make the Sweet 16 or win the whole thing.
Right now, I have them as the second best team in the Big 12. Now, Arizona has a better record. If Arizona loses today and Texas Tech wins, it's the same. But I just don't trust Arizona with shaky point guard play, and they can go through up and bad runs. Texas Tech normally doesn't have those type of bad games. You look at their losses. Yeah, they lost to Arizona away. They lost to Iowa State, not a bad loss. They lost to A&M in a neutral setting, St. Joe's in a neutral setting, and UCF at home is their one bad loss, but that was back in December 31st. Grant McCasland is someone that, boy, I was a fan of at North Texas. He knows how to prepare his team for conference tournaments. He knows how to prepare his team for March Madness. And you take a team like Tech that has the experience of getting there last year with a coach of North Texas. Remember, his last 2 years at North Texas, he won 25 and 30 or 31 games. That guy can coach. So the coach, to me, has them as the second best team. And when you're the second best team and getting decent odds, it's something I always look at in futures.
All right. Ralph and I have some agreement there. We'll see if I end up getting to the window with the Red Raiders. Ralph giving out those free premium plays on the over. Steve Merril going to take us home. We got 16 minutes until tip. I told you guys that today is the best college basketball slate. So if you have a question for Steve Merril, please drop it in the chat and we will get to it. Welcome in, Steve Merril. How you been, buddy?
Doing well, Kelly. And I want to chime in if I can on the half-point thing. First of all, if it really is like 3.5%, you should be buying it. I don't think it's going to probably land that high because at minus 110, it's 52.5% to break even. At minus 120, it's 54.5%. So you need to win at like 2% higher clip long term. I will say, though, with teasers, we talk about situations where teasers are working better. That's buying 6 points, basically. Later in the season, the lines are sharper. I don't recommend buying a half point in college basketball, but come tournament time, especially the conference tournaments, you could maybe make an argument that it's worth it just because the lines are so incredibly accurate. But here's what I'll say. You never should buy a half a point because you can get it for free. Just go to the oddslogic.com screen or, the WagerTalk free odds screen right now, and you will find a half-point difference almost every game in one of the major books, right? So stop being lazy, have 4 or 5 accounts, and get the half point for free. That's why you should never pay 10 cents for it.
Steve Merril with the common sense. What a shocker. I love that. You are absolutely right, yep. Steve. You should have multiple outs. Everybody, I live in Florida, right? We only have one legal book here, but don't think that is my only out. You definitely want to be able to shop around. All right, let's talk about this Michigan State-Illinois game. Steve, it looks like you have a Michigan State zip-up on, but I highly doubt that actually is. Look, Mar said that they did play Sparty at 7. Art texted me that Michigan State was a public underdog here. I love the ranked versus ranked. Let me pull that up really quick. My good friend Clint Farrar, he's always in the comments. He does a ranked versus ranked trends team. So we have a ranked home, unranked home team.
Unranked home now, yeah.
They're unranked home versus a ranked opponent. They are now 18, 16, and 2 on the season, which is not great. I will say they used to be a lot better. But if you look towards just the Big Ten, 5 and 7 on the season. Ooh, I think I'm going to wait till halftime to take a look at this one, Steve. But I want to know your thoughts. And, of course, B Daddy wants to know your thoughts as well.
Big Daddy, one of the loyalist viewers we have here on WagerTalk TV, and he checks out my top 25 video. And I did a little teaser on my top 25 video. I have 4 games for this Saturday. Go check it out here on WagerTalk TV. And this game was just a bit outside because Illinois dropped out of the rankings this past week, despite winning both games last week. A little strange to me that they dropped out. This is a team that had lost to Rutgers, but then beat Minnesota and UCLA, but they are no longer ranked. So that is why they're officially an unranked team. I think they're 28th right now. They're like 3rd in the additional votes in the AP. And if they win this game, they very well might be ranked next week, and they should win the game. They're like a 6-point favorite. But what's interesting, if you look at the net rankings, like KenPom and some other metrics, Illinois is as high as 10th in the country right now in the net ratings. Michigan State's not even top 20. So I look at the AP poll really for the video and for some trends like this, but Illinois is the better team. It's a focus spot, and it's also a revenge spot at home because they lost by 2 points at Michigan State back on January 19th. But a 2-point loss at Michigan State, no shame in that, especially when you shoot just 5 for 24 from 3-point range. So I think they're the better team in this game. It's a focus spot at home, and I do like the unranked home favorite against a ranked team. It's an angle that might be slightly up this year, but it did extremely well last year and the year before, and it makes a lot of sense. Not sure it's necessarily the contrarian play today, though it's 6, but I think the odds makers got this one right. Illinois is the better team, and they win and cover.
I agree. Illinois is a better team, but I think we can find probably better than 6.5 or 7, either in game or maybe at halftime. We'll check that one out. Guys, if you have a question for Steve, drop it in the chat. We got 12 minutes. Steve is going to take us home. Ooh, Abby Sports wants to know, any thoughts on Kansas, Utah? Here's a game that I think is completely flying under the radar right now, Steve, because, well, Kansas Jayhawks have been kind of on a roller coaster. They win one, they lose one. They win one, they lose one. They win one, they lose one. This is a spot where they should be able to win the game against a Utah team that's just really, frankly, not all that good, off a 2-game losing streak here. My biggest problem with Utah and why I wouldn't want to take the points here against the Jayhawks, well, they don't make their free throws, Steve, and we all know how I feel about teams that don't make their free throws. They generally do not get my money.
Yeah, you talk about not making their free throws, and part of it's they don't shoot well, but they don't even get to the line, Kelly. There are 364 teams in Division I men's basketball, and currently Kansas ranks 358th for percentage of points from the charity stripe. They get only like 23% of their points from the charity stripe, and on the road, that's a problem because you don't get to the line quite as much. Another little bit of an under the radar angle here I'll point out is that, Utah is one of the newer teams in the Big 12, and they have that thin air and altitude edge, which is a legit edge in college basketball. Home court is stronger in college basketball than any other sport, and when you get the altitude factor as well, it's really worth a look. And I think Kansas, who's really a weaker road team to start with, could struggle here. So I think home court makes sense with the Utes in this one. And once again, if they don't get to the free throw line, by the way, Utah's top 80 in the country getting to the free throw line percentage of points. Kansas has a very strong 3-point defense. That's been their strength, top 10 in the nation this year. But Utah doesn't rely too heavily on the three. They're a very mediocre shooting team, but I think they could score down low here. And this is another game you might want to look at in-game, because if you're going to factor in that altitude on in-game or even a second half play, with Utah might be the better option.
Let's keep that one on the radar. We'll just wait and see. All right, Steve, they think you're the GOAT. At least I think that's a GOAT emoji. Preston wants to go back to this Kentucky-Texas game as if I did not lose my mind enough during Ralph's segment. So I'm just going to set this one out and let you tell me what you think about Kentucky catching a couple on the road versus the Longhorns.
Yeah, Ralph mentioned how, the point guard was questionable. I'm checking Odds Logic, and Kelly, you and I both use Odds Logic, and there's a special offer on my page for a 7-day trial because it has real-time injuries. They have him listed out indefinitely, Lamont Butler, and I'm not expecting him to play. Jackson Robinson, the 5th most important player, is also listed as out, and Butler accounts for 30% of the team's assists. So we'll see how this plays out. In a tough road game, I think that could be a problem against Texas, and Kentucky's a tricky team, and I kept this off my card today for my clients with the injury uncertainty, but also the fact that Kentucky's just one of those bipolar, teams we've talked about. The NIL money and everything else in college basketball has made this handicapping tricky at times. They go and beat Tennessee as a double-digit dog a week or two ago. Then they lose outright as a double-digit favorite right after that to Arkansas, have the letdown still against Ole Miss and lose by 14. And now they have since come back and won by 23 and then beat Tennessee again by double digits this time. So it's hard to know which Kentucky team shows up. My guess is it's probably not the Class A team, especially shorthanded. I would lean Texas in this game, but not a game that made my best bet card.
Yeah, no, I also, of course, I lean Texas here, Steve. they're on the do not bet list. They are in the timeout. You do not get another dollar of Kelly's money until you figure it out, Rodney Terry. All right, guys. Let's get a couple more questions here before we get to tip off Merril. Oh boy, Can we get some
boy, here we
William
go.
and Mary insight?
I knew Bill was there.
Sandoval over here digging deep. I got to go to Ken Palm for this one. Let's even see. I have not watched a William Mary game all year. They're off a nice win over Hofstra, which, as Art DeCesar mentioned earlier, there was some sharp money on Hofstra today. Ugh, this defense. Brian Earl, head coach. Don't know much about him. They turned the ball over, Steve. Tell me what else I need to know, because it's not like I've been watching a ton of Drexel games either.
Well, it's several things you need to know. First of all, you should have known this green was William and Mary, and I wore this jacket and shirt Thursday to the game, but I took the jacket off. I got a little warm. I normally don't get warm, but I got warm. They won straight up but failed to cover, so I realized you got to do the double, right? So you do the jacket. Woo, what side am I on? Come on. And you do the Superman, right? So you got to do the double. So we will be there. And this game, by the way, is on Mass and National TV, Kelly, so no excuse why you can't watch it. You could have seen me Thursday courtside lounging, and I'll be there today at 2 Eastern on Saturday lounging behind the Drexel bench. They no longer have Bruiser Flint.
Courtside seats at William and Mary? $5?
Oh, yeah. They're like $10 tickets, and I sneak a few down there. They're charging for parking. This is the first year they've ever charged for parking. I paid $5, and that's like murder, man. This is like you making me pay to go see this. But hey, all seriousness, Brian Earl turning this program around. He came from Cornell. They were one of the fastest-paced teams in the country last year. They are third in the nation. 3-point percentage is taken. About 50% of their shots come from three. Problem is, about 4 games ago, they were leading rebounder and scorer. Their only good big man, Noah Collier, looked like he tore his Achilles. He's probably out for the season. And that's why they started to lose some games. With that said, though, they are still undefeated at home. I believe there's only 17 teams out of 364 that are still undefeated at home. They squeaked out that 1-point non-cover against Hofstra on Thursday. And this is a big revenge spot against Drexel because of one of those recent road losses with the injury was 3 games ago. They went into Drexel. They lost by 20. They were only down by 4 at the half, lost by 20. They were only down by 2 with like 11 minutes to go. So I like William and Mary today. The 20 turnovers was a little unusual on Thursday, and I actually think that's a positive, Kelly. When you have 20 turnovers, you still win the game. Not a terrible sign. As long as they keep that in check, which I think they will today, they maybe get their revenge. And by the way, sitting behind the visiting bench is fun. I've done it for 25 years. Bruiser Flint was the Drexel coach for decades, the old UMass coach from the 90s, like little Theo Huxtable is what he looked like. And not Theo Huxtable, from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. What was Will Smith's cousin? Comment in the chats. The one that did the Carlton dance.
Yeah.
Bruiser Flint looked like Carlton. Best, most fun coach ever. And I couldn't even heckle him. I liked him so much. But I think he thought I was a Drexel fan. But one time he's yelling at a player, and I go, "He's killing you, coach. He's killing you." He turns around, he goes, he was the best. It was like watching Carlton from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So R.I.P. Bruiser Flint, wherever you are now coaching.
That's great. That is great. It doesn't look like we have any more questions, but I'll give you guys about 30 more seconds while we ask Steve Merril to give himself a little bit of promotion.
So college hoops is here. Not going to mess with the all-star 3-point shootout or whatever they're calling these games nowadays. It's Team Chuck versus Shaq versus Lisa Leslie. I don't know what's going on tomorrow. It's a shame because we used to find edges in the NFL Pro Bowl and the NBA All-Star game, but no longer. But we focus hard on college hoops this time of year. I've got 3 best bets going for Saturday. We're on an 80% run as we head into the weekend. Get all 3 best bets for college hoops and a bonus free play. Not a game we talked about, a bonus free play for tonight on my page with analysis right now. Steve Merril, WagerTalk.com. We have a 6-day special, buy 3, get 3 free. We have a 30-day special for less than $8 a day. And we also have a 1-year special with promo code SM365, which gets it down to $3 a day, $1 a play. And oh yes, baseball is right around the corner. We doubled our bankroll in baseball alone last year, up over 100 units in baseball, finished up over 133 units all sports, number 1 at WagerTalk in 24. So let's do it again in 2025. SM365 gets it down to about $1 a play. Check out that free play. Check out the special offers. Steve Merril, WagerTalk.com, and get there quicker. Shortcut WT.buzz/SM.
All right, Steve Merril. I don't think we've got any questions that populated. We've got 4 minutes until tip-off. So I'm out of here, guys. As Steve mentioned, tomorrow's the All-Star game. We'll see if VR gets anything sharp. I tried to get Hakeem Prophet to come on and talk about the All-Star game, and he basically gave me the middle finger. So it doesn't appear that anybody wants to talk about said NBA All-Star game, but we will see if we can find a Wager Talk expert to come on. We'll talk about some college basketball as well. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your insight, your questions, your likes, your thumbs up, and your subscribes. We'll see you guys tomorrow.